The Pink Valley is a surreal action horror doom mod released on ModDB November 24th, 2024, created by Van Villedon. It was released in various languages including Spanish and English. I'll try not to write too much as this will essentially become a bit of a ramble regardless, and spoilers for the entirety of the mod. If you plan on playing it, go play it instead of watching this. The mod starts off very edgy. Postal 1 and Hatred are obvious influences. Hell, there's a level named after Not Important.
My name is not important.
You don't need much more evidence than that. Nevertheless, it does also take further influences, like not needing to harm the little ones. Something you'll also observe in Postal 1, with not having to eliminate any non-hostiles. Though, non-hostiles doesn't entirely apply here. You still need to get rid of the adults in most levels, and sadly the doggies too. It took me by surprise to hear some Mr. Bungle's Mr. Nice Guy followed by Hypocrite starting playing in the game, mixed with sudden jarring juxtaposition of upbeat Spanish pop music that got stuck in my head after finishing playing. I've yet to identify certain tracks he used, like those playing during the endings, but they're both likely representative of the meaning behind what the player sees anyway. Though highly violent, it is a decent mod and surprisingly goes much further than that, acting like a game of its own. And I'll get into the nitty-gritty in a second. The heavy work is admirable, allegedly taking 3 years to completely finish. It isn't simply a shock value mod only, where the character, seemingly named Tillin, eats flesh on the floor, ignoring actual food like bread. There's thankfully a decent, though disturbing experience behind the surface. Story-wise, we are given a chaotic trek through the mind of a disturbed adult, static often being the only noise we hear, him rotting away in front of a TV and drinking heavily. Having grown up in a highly dysfunctional home, where not only did his parents yell and fight, domestic abuse obviously flourished, like father, like son. Obviously a lot of this is just theorizing, but I'd reckon that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Sex being the only factor for keeping the relationship alive for Tillin and his partner, and also domestic abuse. Twisting hospital corridors, trouble at school, and potentially authority, all of these things affecting Tillin's later years. Whether or not this is the case, the Pink Valley is describing the relationship between his parents indeed affecting his view of relationships and women and greatly impacted his mental state. And honestly, going to the hospital is probably one of the main reasons Tillin goes out in the first place. Naturally, Tillin is incapable of holding down a healthy relationship, resorting to violence against his partner, outright annihilating her at first before longing for her presence again. What is also evident through environmental storytelling is Tillin sexually violating her, being entirely lust-filled and unable to understand what love truly is. Monsters we fight strongly exhibit this side to Tillin, and the likely meaning behind the mod's title, The Pink Valley. Especially in one ending with the song from the movie Lolita playing, hammering in that there was no real love, only the love for the deed. Tillin is entirely a villain in his own right. We also see the exceptionally violent side also being represented through enemies that we battle in the hospital section. And while Tillin is that villain, we sympathize with him in his earlier years and the battles of the mind he continues to endure before finally accepting death, potentially. Many times on our journey do we see Tillin next to his bed with either his head blown off or his body burned to a cinder, the desire for death, or the act having already transpired. Pictures of his ex-lover on display next to his childhood photos, his mother, father and sister, with his own image scratched out. Strangely, our next-door neighbours have similar photos on the wall, a representation of a home that he wished he had. Never do we see a boy in the home. This house is either imagined or similar enough to his childhood experience that Tillin projects memories into it, theoretically representing his own home at youth. Similarly, we have broken mirrors that we're often met with. Tillin's inability to face himself, hating himself, and or his rage taking over as it does so often. Only sometimes copying a glance at his actual appearance unless we crouch. As we fight on, the world makes less and less sense, becoming fragmented, like broken or fading memories. Pink skies and voids continue during our daily battles, coinciding with the appearance of Tillin's lifeless corpse throughout the later maps in the mod. We might be viewing the last of Tillin's mind before death brings peace to his troubled mind, or, more dreadfully, said desire for death as his ex-lover haunts his thoughts since doing her in, We know Tillin has been suffering from his growing mental instability before the inevitable breakdown. When observing his house exterior, we can see that there's a grave behind the doghouse, big enough for a person, big enough for his ex-partner. Until one day, when his fragile mind snaps and that filled grave suddenly becomes empty, something dragged through the earth and through the fencing opposite the confines of Tillin's abode. Someone or something pulled out his ex-partner, and quite frankly, it's probably his memories. The door, though, is eventually locked that shows the unmarked grave belonging to his ex-partner, because who else would it be? The dog we never see either. And then Tillin facing his own ending after it all. The stick figure-like entities and weapons are entirely hand-drawn and animated fluidly. This type of work I love. It has that cutesy look that's malleable enough to match more chaotic projects, though adds a touch of goofiness or that homemade something that people may not entirely take seriously. It really matches the surreal reality of the mod's experience. Looking at levels, there's good implementation of programming tricks, such as the path behind you disappearing once you've exited. Sometimes these triggers can be tricky to locate, as you'll be wandering around for potential ages before crossing that trigger line to let the rest of the level happen. Sometimes it gets tiresome. The same with the artistic fade in and fade outs that occur. I've blasted a few shotgun shells because I thought the mod crashed. If they were made shorter, it would improve the player experience considerably. In the end, you have two actual endings, excluding an extra joke ending, which depends entirely on whether you kill the big bad. Tillin imagines his smiling ex-partner giving him all the armor and ammo he needs for what's about to happen before heading back outside the home. It's all a vast pink arena with an onslaught of perhaps the worst enemy in the mod, and their animalistic form. We listen to a pretty decent track before being interrupted by what appears to maybe be Tillin, his father, or a representation of his deep, lusting desires. The music changes to a warped, ringing tone, and we're defeated. We see Tillin standing happily with his ex-partner, reunited in this pink valley for eternity. Alternatively, we survive and get the yellow key necessary to get the door back open, and see a completely broken version of Tillin's living spot. A pink fragmenting sky overhead as he makes for the bus, leaving forever. This latter is considered to be the good ending by a fair amount of people who played the mod, but I'm not sure. Both endings you can take as really bad. Tillin never learned anything from his actions. He simply repeated and went with the same violent cycle he always has, probably doomed to repeat it in the next location he finds himself in. Nothing has changed. Meanwhile, staying in Fantasyland and reunited with his ex means they're happy for a while. Maybe Tillin will even imagine the perfect relationship, as he thinks one would be, in order to maintain happiness forever. But equally possible in this ending is that Tillin will probably start the same cycle again, eventually growing bored of his ex, of the sex, and reveal the violent side of himself all over again. Another bad ending. In either case, Tillin is likely dead and in limbo while trapped in the Pink Valley. The story elements are scattered around maps, which can sometimes be easily missed, like in the final stand in one of the levels where you have a shootout. Two lovers ignoring the world and simply interacting between themselves. You'll find them sitting together, chatting, even having a picnic, but you can get rid of them in the same way you can do so with everybody else. The level ends as you get rid of a faceless individual, likely Tillin sitting alone, seemingly contemplative or sad by their posture. Some environmental storytelling you can easily miss. You can even just wander past the words pathetica or pathetic scribbled over and over again in a school copybook. There are a couple secrets that make you wonder what the hell just happened in at least one of them, and other stuff. After a while, new enemy types appear, humanoid figures walking around, until they appear with nothing but a black hole for a face. Just a scribbled hole. Their bodies veiny and accompanied by loud screeching guitar sounds, once Tillin is spotted. It's overwhelming, and the first thing that comes to mind is to retaliate with a weapon. But they don't actually harm you, they just prevent you from walking in the direction they're standing in. It's now when the more disturbing enemy designs start showing up, no longer mere stick figures. Bird-like monstrosities show up with genitals dropped to the floor, birthing these same stick figures, and dog-like crawling monsters leaving behind veiny tendrils reaching up to harm the player. The bird-like entities cannot be touched as they kill instantly. Instead, fire is the only solution, albeit temporarily. The abominations will self-revive. Buildings lose their original shape, the ground disappears with only the pink void below. You fight enemies that strangely look like your character that had, let's say, a certain dispute in a bathroom stall, with shotguns and all arrangements of armor and weaponry, and floating heads of your ex, including one that shoots blood from a vagina face. Speaking of weapons, there are quite a few. There's the standard stuff like a shotgun, chainsaw, axe, flamethrower, and then you've got your special weapons if you hit right click on the mouse. You have pistols, molotovs, grenades, and other stuff. Then there's the weird ones like the mini tillins that are items, giving health when squeezed to death, bug spray, and a toothed machine gun. You've been picking up teeth all this time during levels without knowing why. This is why. It shoots both bug spray and teeth that bounce around the room. You can pick some back up in the aftermath of an altercation, as it definitely shoots a lot, but you do need to find these weapons first. You can go through an entire playthrough without a chainsaw if you don't locate it, for example, seeing canisters of gasoline and wondering what the hell they're for. Also, I neglected to mention that your ex-lover is also stalking you throughout the entirety of the game. She'll just start appearing behind corners and shit. Couldn't get her on film though, so you're just gonna have to take my word for it. Pretty creepy, yeah. I will say, this mod is hard, and I mean really hard. It's more difficult than Viscera Fest, and I'm still trying to get through that one for a video. The mod also took away my UI at one point, and I decided to live with the thrill of not knowing when my character was about to die. It was both frustrating and rewarding. Nevertheless, the monster designs are really interesting. Perfect representative images of Tillin rotting away in front of TV at night, the ruination of his ex-lover sexually, the moaning triad, the cum shooter that slows your movement speed. You've got it all. Jesus Christ. In the end of playing the mod, you're left feeling sort of hollow, and it's maybe for the best. Like something Tillin would probably feel. I'm not sure I can recommend the Pink Valley to just anybody. It's genuinely disturbing and hit a point in me that made me both pretty angry and sad, but in a way that's actually quite impressive for many pieces of media. There's a lot of games that leave you feeling nothing at all, so maybe this is all a matter of perspective and up to you on whether this is a good thing. Certain parts of the mod also made me want to quit, but out of sheer spite, I completed it. I'm not sure if I feel good about it, but if you feel a little masochistic, then yeah, maybe go for it. Otherwise, consider watching a playthrough. The dev appears to be actively making updates alongside another active fan, so we're yet to see which weapons get officially involved, and a level due to arrive at some point in the future. It's nice to see a dev still working to add updates to their project. Also, on the topic of this mod being banned or illegal, I ask where? Nowhere has this been classified banned or illegal content, so don't worry about downloading it. Thanks for watching. Maybe leave a like and subscribe if you like the video. There's a Ko-fi or Ko-fi, however you pronounce it, in the description if you'd like to see that. Otherwise, dislike it and move on. I appreciate you making it to the end of the video. It does actually mean a lot to me. In any case, see you in another year. Take care, and bye.